Hey folks, let's get started with myJoin. So, myJoin is going to take in an array and give us a string with all of the elements in the array in it, separated neatly by some sort of delimiter, either something that we pass in to our function or some default value. Let's get started by making sure we create a new string that we add array elements into. So I'm going to call this join string. I'm going to start it out at this empty string, but we can add to it in a second. And I always like to return so I can make sure I'm returning the right string. Next, let's add each of the elements in the array to this string. So I'll go ahead and loop through the whole array, starting at the 0th index, going up until the very end of the array. And what we want to do is sort of accumulate these array elements into this one string. So ultimately we want to do something like take what join string is to begin with. So on the first element, it would be this empty string, and then add it to that first element or that current element in the array. A shorthand for this kind of operation where you're reassigning something and after adding it to something else looks like this. So I can add a plus before the equals and then take out the redundant, or not redundant variable, but the repeated variable there. So that'll get some array elements added to the string. Let's run it, check it out. So we are missing, first of all, our delimiters. I want to hold off on that for a second and go ahead and keep this undefined value from making it into the string. So I'm only going to do this addition if the element in the array is not undefined and not null. So that would look something like this. If array I is not equal to undefined and array I is not equal to null. And that should keep that undefined value out of my join string. Okay, cool. Now let's add the delimiter. Okay, that looks like it's okay for hello world. If we highlight this though, we can see that there's this white space at the end, and for join, we only want to add the delimiter in between elements. We don't want to have it after a single element at the end there, and certainly not at the beginning of our string. And now we've got some craziness happening with our second example, but let's tackle that in a second. We want to make sure that we only add the delimiter if we are adding elements that all the way up to the last element in the array. We want to include the delimiter, but not for the last element in the array. That's a better way of saying it. So let's add a check here as well. If do we want to put this outside? Sure, it doesn't really matter what order we do these two ifs. But if we are at the last element in the array, then we want to do join string plus or equal to just the element without the delimiter. Else, let's do this. Excuse me. And if we run this, we should see hello world without that white space on the end. Here we've got this not a number, be undefined, false. So we sort of have a clue as to what's happening here. If we look at this example, we can see that the delimiter is not being passed in. And when you have an argument that's defined here and that you're using but is not necessarily passed in, then you want to, it'll be equal to undefined. And in that case, we have at this very beginning 2 plus undefined, and that's giving us not a number. Not what we want. Let's go ahead and make sure that if the delimiter is not defined, or is equal to undefined, then we will set it equal to a comma. and then we get what we want. There is my join.